Death at Devil's Bridge, Chapter 23. If ever there was a case of clearer evidence than this case is that case. William Arabin, 1773 to 1841. Kate was gratified at the courtiers' rapt attention that the two men paid to Bess Gurton's story, as that woman told it from beginning to end, hesitant and fearful at first, but gaining confidence as she went on. "Pig's blood!" exclaimed Charles when she had finished. "What confounded good luck that you thought to include pig's blood in your ointment, Mistress Gurton. You may have given us the key to solving this mystery." "I fail to see," Lakin said, "the particular significance of pig's blood as evidence in this case." "The significance, Ned, simply put, it lies in the fact that the platelets contained in swine blood are distinguished by their large size. When we use a microscope to compare the grease I removed from the damner's fender with the ointment in the mustard pot, we shall no doubt discover in both samples the same large corpuscles." Kate said in an ironic aside to Lakin, "My heaven's name, didn't I think of that?" Bess's eyes were wide. "Corpuscles? But how did cork get into the blood, milady?" Charles, however, was continuing. "The soot particles will be abundantly obvious. The vegetative tissue should also display similar cellular structure in both of the samples. Had we a mind to it, we could confirm the identification of comparing that tissue to fresh leaf samples from the same herbs." Kate sighed, thinking that whatever the question, Charles would have a scientific answer. She did not mean to be disrespectful to her husband, but in her judgment, scientific evidence did not always take them closer to the truth. Sometimes truth was a matter of human spirit, not intellect. "Can we not simply take Mistress Gurton's word for what is in the ointment, Charles?" she asked. "But that will not yield the information we are seeking," Charles said, growing even more excited. "You see, if a third trace of this distinctive same substance were to be located on the clothing, say, of one of the suspects, we would have an incontrovertible evidence of the man's involvement." "And if he attempted to deny it," Kate said, seeing that in this instance science might well be of some service, "the man could be confronted with the proof and might be surprised into revealing his guilt." "Exactly so." Charles was pacing up and down, his hands behind his back. "The case should be much stronger than the one built solely on dactyloscopic evidence." Bess bent forward. "Kate, dactyloscope which, ma'am?" "Fingerprints," Kate whispered. "The marks on the tips of your fingers." Bess turned her hands over and began to intently examine her fingers. Yes, indeed," Charles said, and striding on. "A single piece of physical evidence is a smudged fingerprint which, as you say, Ned, a jury would find very hard to swallow." At this, Bess put her hands in her pockets of her woolen skirt. "Were we to find traces of the substance, I suppose," Lakin said dryly, "that you want me to return to the inn and examine the clothing which the men were wearing yesterday." "And the pocket handkerchiefs," Kate put in. "I know that if I were to discover Mistress Gurton's ointment on my hands, I should want to remove it as quickly as possible. A pocket handkerchief might well provide evidence for that." "I think it's a very good idea to have a look at that clothing," Charles said, and added, "if it does not strain your ethical principles, Ned." "But if I had soiled my clothing in that way," Lakin objected, "I should give it immediately to the laundress to be cleaned." "Cleaned?" Bess asked. "And who should be doing the wash over Sunday, I'd like to know? Certainly not our Peg. She's on her knees at the chapel all the Sabbath." "Mistress Gurton is right, Ned," Kate said. "It is not likely that the clothing has been washed. Your search may prove more fruitful than you'd expect." The constable nodded. "Then I shall do it." "And while you're at it, you might look for the jar," Kate said. At Charles' quizzical expression, she added, "Well, of course, if I had picked up Mistress Gurton's jar of ointment and used some of it, I should certainly put the jar into my pocket. I shouldn't want to leave it lying about as evidence, should I?" "Very well, then," Lakin said. "I shall look for the jar, too. As for fingerprints, however—" He paused and gave Charles a dark, ominous look. Yes, I know," Charles said impatiently, "but if you should happen upon an object that bears clear fingerprint, perhaps you could remove it, and—" "I shall not." Lakin's voice was firm. Nodding to Bess and bowing to Kate, he left the room. Bess turned to Kate. "What?" she asked in a whisper. "About fingerprints." So Kate, making as quick a job of it as she could, gave Bess the details as Bill Bardwell understood them. "With luck," she concluded, "the fingerprint will identify the person who found your ointment and applied it to the motorcar's brake." There was a moment of silence. Then Bess, with a long sigh, said, Would you need to take mine? Yours, Charles exclaimed. I should be very pleased to take yours, for the purposes of elimination, of course. Sir Charles means, Kate interpreted, that he can then show you that you are not the guilty person. Damnation, Bess said heavily. Thought as much. She screwed her eyes tight shut, turned her head to one side, and held out her hands. Here they be, then, your ladyship. Take him, I only ask. She seemed to choke. I only ask that you leave me 1 or 2 on each hand, if you please. I make me living with baskets like an... Oh dear no, Kate exclaimed. Your fingers won't be cut off, Bess. They will merely be inked, and their impressions be taken. Bess's eyes opened, and her countenance cleared. Oh, she said, quite relieved. Well then, you can have all 10 of them, if you like, your ladyship, and welcome. When the simple procedure was over, Kate thanked Bess warmly. Please stop by the kitchen and give my compliments to Mrs. Pratt. Perhaps you and she might stop together for a cup of tea. At Bess's frown, Kate said, I know that you are upset with her for speaking to me, but I think you will have to agree that things turned out for the best in the end. That's true enough, your ladyship, admitted Bess, although Sarah do let her tongue run a bit long. When Bess had gone, Kate turned to her husband. What was that business about with Ned and the fingerprints? She asked curiously. And why did you make that odd remark about ethics? Ned has a particular antipathy about taking fingerprints of a person who has not yet been accused of a crime, Charles replied with some irony. He argues that it is an invasion of privacy. But a crime cannot be solved without evidence, Kate objected. Is not the detective obligated to use every small available piece of evidence that he is able to discover? Or she corrected herself, thinking of the latest adventure of Bill Bardwell's female detective. It's a vexed question, Charles said. Suppose that science should somehow permit us to see into your mind, Kate, and determine whether you are telling the truth or a lie. Should the scientist be permitted to intrude on your privacy, even if you are suspected of murder? But if I'm guilty? Just so. But what if you are entirely innocent? And who is to know until the scientist completes his probe of your thoughts, thereby violating your privacy? And what if the scientist's instruments are in error or his conclusions are wrong? Who should be the final arbitrator of such methods? A jury, perhaps? Kate offered tentatively. A jury, Charles chuckled without mirth. Would you care to put your life into the hands of 12 jurors who may be good men and true, but may also be incapable of weighing such delicate evidence? Kate searched for an answer, but realized uncomfortably that she could find none. Ned, and many others for that matter, Charles went on, questioned the propriety of obtaining and using evidence such as a man's fingerprints on the ground that to do so is an invasion of privacy. The issue is one that is likely to see much debate over the next few years, and I myself have not determined where I stand on such matters. He paused. But I am particularly distressed in this case, for there is a fingerprint on that fender, and without Ned's help I see no easy way of matching it against the fingerprints of the suspects. Kate stared at him for a moment, comprehension beginning to dawn. And the suspects are the 3 surviving drivers, of course, as well as Harry Dunstable, Charles Rolls, and Roger Thornton. And for the sake of completeness, I suppose I should include Bradford Marsden. Not Bradford. Why not? He has as much reason to hate Harry Dunstable as the next man, perhaps even more. No, if only to eliminate him, I should obtain his prints, as I already have obtained those of Lawrence and Mistress Girton. But I cannot do that easily, for he has gone off to London. To London? Yes, he has quarrelled with Lord Christopher, or rather, Lord Christopher has quarrelled with him. I cannot get his fingerprints at the moment, but oh, that I had the rest. Kate looked at him steadily. Perhaps you shall, but first I need to speak to you about Squire Thornton. Mrs. Pratt told me this morning that she saw him pull the grapnel from the gondola. He, not the unfortunate Mr. Whipple, is the man who sabotaged the balloon. Charles stared at her incredulous. And it was Squire Thornton who, Kate continued, who gave the Jessops that £30 and who had it noised about that the money came from Charles Rolls. But why should Thornton do that? Charles asked. I'm only guessing, of course, Kate replied, but I think perhaps he wanted to make it appear that Rolls was responsible for old Jessop's death. You remember, of course, that he was the one driving Bradford's motor car that night, and it is Rolls who threatens to snatch Patsy from him, at least as Squire Thornton sees the matter. But no one believes that Rolls killed the man. The coroner did not even have enough evidence to... Lord Christopher and Lady Henrietta might believe it, Kate said, if Squire Thornton told them it were true, and if the victim's family gave it about that Rolls had compensated them. You're saying that Thornton constructed this elaborate charade in order to cast a contender for Patsy's affection into disfavor with her parents? Men have practiced stranger ruses against their rivals, Kate said with a little shrug. It is the same motive, I believe, that led him to pull the grapnel from the gondola. The act was impulsive, no doubt, and entirely in character. He simply seized the chance that opportunity presented to him. You believe, then, that he intended to cause Rolls's death? Not simply to cause difficulty, Kate replied, and keep his rival from becoming a hero. She frowned. I also think it is entirely possible that he is the man who sabotaged Bradford's Daimler. I'm sure that he had as much as opportunity as anyone, and it is certainly in keeping with his other acts of sabotage. He might have found the jar of ointment where Bess Gurton had dropped it, applied it to the break, and gone on about his business. And why should he? To even the score with Bradford, perhaps, and after all, it was Bradford who brought Rolls here. Or he might have wanted to cause trouble for the chase. You saw how he opposed the whole affair. Or perhaps it was a mixture of motive and given an opportunity. Charles's brow was furrowed. I see all that you say, Kate, and grant you it's a plausibility, but if Thornton should deny Mrs. Pratt's accusation, how many do you think would take her word against his? Not many, I fear, Kate said gloomily. If only we had some other evidence, another eyewitness perhaps, who could corroborate Cook's testimony. I think perhaps we do, said a woman's voice. Kate turned startled. The speaker was Patsy Marston. Her face was pale and very serious, and in her hand she held a photograph.